People of Reddit, what's the creepiest encounter you've had with a complete stranger that still gives you chills? U/Object Report responded. When I lived in a rental property on the west side of Albuquerque many moons ago, I had a census taker knock on my door. Okay, fine, I guess someone needs to do it. He asked me how many people lived in the home, how long I had been there, etc. Then he asked for my social security number as well as my wife's. No. I don't give my SSH to anyone except the IRS dude. He said it's the law, you have to provide me with it. No, I absolutely do not, now please leave. Him, I'll be back tomorrow. Sure enough, he shows up the next day banging on my door and yelling from outside, I know you're home, I know you're in there. I'll be back tomorrow. He came back a third day knocking on the door and I yelled through the door, I'm calling the police, you fucking psychopath. Sure enough, the police show up 15 minutes later, he's still standing there with his clipboard. The police take his ID, he gets on the radio and comes back 10 minutes later. Sir, there is no record of you working for the local census. You will need to vacate the premises. Absolutely bizarre experience. U/Xblack responded. Pretty sure my dog saved me from a dangerous encounter. I was very pregnant and was leaving the grocery store with my cart. Lexi was waiting for me in the car, she loved the car rides when the weather was good. So I was loading up the groceries and realized that a man I had seen sitting in a car before I went into the store was still there and was watching me. He got out of his car and asked if I needed assistance. Which, I get, I was very pregnant, it was the polite thing to do. But something about it immediately put me on alert. I was completely unnerved by him and still can't state exactly what it was. I said no thanks, LV got it, but he continued to get out of his vehicle and walk towards my car. Lexi had been snuggled up on the front seat and must have heard there was some concern in my voice or something. Duda continued to walk my direction, claiming he just wanted to help. I continued to say no, L don't need help, no worries. As the man approached the hatch of my vehicle where I was loading the groceries, Lexi sprang up from the front seat, leapt over the back seat, and jumped to the cargo area and started growling and baring her teeth. It was dark and she was an all-black dog, so she seemingly appeared from nowhere. That was the only thing that made the dude back up and leave. He started cursing at me, calling me names for not accepting his help, and for me letting my dog threaten him. I will say, thank goodness it was dark because Lexi was a cardigan Welsh corgi that was all black and was far less intimidating looking in the daylight. She looked like a black lab puppy but had super short stumpy little legs. She stayed right by my ankles the rest of the night once we were home, would not let me out of her sight. U/JKB_18_cats responded. I used to work at Maya in the deli. A customer came up and asked for my opinion. I recommended all the things liked and was just super friendly, I guess. He ended up calling the store that night asking for me. The other girl I was working with didn't even offer the phone to me, just told him I had left, thank God. He came back the next day and started asking me personal question. I was very vague and then started helping other customers. He left, came back the next day, I had to get management involved. He was standing like behind a pole just watching me. I had to be walked to my car every night for about a month. I would call my boyfriend at the time, now husband, every night on the way home, and lived in an apartment building with another coworker whose husband would literally walk me to my door. I still feel likes his watching me sometimes, and this was about 4 years ago. U/El Chapo_Jr. responded. Doesn't really give me chills but was quite creepy. I was leaving a club with my friend and happened to walk out at the same time as two very drunk young women. They were so drunk one of them kept saying, "Where is my phone?" LV lost my phone until she realized it was half wedged into her top. They started talking to us and I decided to make sure they got home safe. They didn't want to pay for an Uber and wanted to walk home despite not being able to walk and not being able to operate their phones. I insisted that they order it and did it for them. I also decided to wait to order mine because they were extremely vulnerable and unwise, probably recently 18. While this is happening, a very sketchy looking dude with a weird look in his eye comes up to us. He asks us if we want to go to an after party and mentions his Uber is on the way. I politely refuse for all of us and he kinda hangs around looking at the girls and looking toward the entrance of the club. His Uber, van-style people carrier with a sliding door, pulls up, he opens the door and says nothing to the driver. Suggests we come to the party again. Waits for an uncomfortable amount of time and realizes we are not going to come. Closes the Uber door without saying anything to the driver. And the Uber drives off. He then makes his way back up to the club. He was in the club that night and probably followed the women out, but unfortunately for him, fortunately for them, they got talking to me. U/multiversem responded. I was about 10 when my family was staying at a cabin in the mountains in the winter. It was a snowy night and my parents and aunt-uncle had all gone to their bedrooms to sleep. My siblings and cousins and I were all sleeping in the living room. At some point I was awakened by a chilly draft. When I opened my eyes I saw the front door was slightly cracked and there was a man making eye contact with me. In the middle of the night, in the freezing cold, on the deck of a cabin that was way up the mountain, far removed from town. I screamed for my dad. The man disappeared into the darkness. My dad quickly came to the living room and turned on the porch lights. The man was just standing in the driveway silently looking back at us. He claimed he was just looking for a drink of water. U/deleted responded. Late to the party but I'll tell mine. I enjoy a beer at a bar by myself from time to time. Either to just be alone, or maybe chat with a bartender if they're feeling social. Occasionally I'll get some unwanted attention, but usually a casual mention of my boyfriend gets folks to buzz off without issue. One time I was at the little dive bar by my house. A guy sat next to me and started chatting with me. Friendly stuff. Nothing too forward. Didn't even catch his name. Then he goes, "You live at my address, yes? Unit number 1, on the corner?" I lived in an apartment complex. My unit was indeed number 1 on the corner. I had never seen this man before. I got a sinking this isn't good feeling. "No," I replied, "I'm sorry, you must have me mistaken for someone else." His demeanor changed immediately. He twisted towards me with this really annoyed look. He responded, "No. I see you. I always see you. You live there." His tone was this weird mix of frustrated and offended. He was just glaring at me, waiting for me to respond. Insert "I'm in danger" Ralph meme. I bumbled out "Nope, don't live there" one more time, paid my bill, and bounced. I was nervous to go home, so I went to a friend's who gave me some pepper spray just in case. Not like L would be effective using it, but hey, it was something. U/squared recovers responded. In July of 2006, I, now 44F, was attacked while jogging on a bike path that butted up against a large university campus in the Midwest. I was just nearing the end of a 5-mile run when it happened. The path had looped around a wooded area and lake in an oval shape. I had seen the guy at the beginning of my jog, but thought nothing of it. So I can only conclude that he had waited in the adjacent woods for me to loop back around. After he attacked me and threw me to the ground, he had attempted to suffocate me and move me up into the wooded area. After a very short period of time, by sheer good fortune another man came along the path and pulled the guy off me and my attacker fled. The cops were immediately called and my attacker was later apprehended. The guy ended up being convicted of kidnapping, for forcibly moving my body against my will, and attempted rape and served 3.5 years in prison out of an 8-year sentence. He had had previous convictions for armed robbery and assault. U/heavy_imagination 592 responded. Please play along when a woman comes up to you and pretends to know you. It has happened to me. I approached a couple in Target pretending to know them and they walked me to my car as there was a creepy looking dude vulturing and even followed us outside to see what car I drove. Couldn't be comfortable after that. U/civilized_doofus replied to this with, "This has happened to me twice. Once while sitting in the dining room of an Arby's, a woman came over to my table and said some guy was creeping her out and asked if I would walk her to her car. I did. Never saw the guy though. Another time at a laundromat, a woman asked me to stick around while she finished folding because some kids were harassing her. They were just dumbass kids, but they were in fact harassing her. I put a stop to that. I was a single dork back then, and both women were way out of my league. Apparently I looked safe though, of course was. I'll always remember that Dudley Do-Right feeling." U/Ninmina responded. This was in San Jose, California. I worked at a car dealership and a lady came in to look at a truck. She was going to pay cash. She was wearing expensive jewelry but acted very strange. The whole time I was trying to figure out if she was on drugs, ultimately decided I wasn't comfortable going on a test drive with her. We were close to closing anyway. There was just something off. So Elle closed up shop and watched as she wandered through the car lot looking at cars. The next day I see her mugshot on TV. She had bludgeoned to death an older lady with a hammer in the lady's home and robbed her. She committed this crime the night before visiting our dealership. So the jewelry she was wearing, purchasing her getaway car, I can't help but feel I got out of that situation with my life. So glad I trusted my gut on that one. U/immutable responded. Mine is fairly mild, but was still gross and creepy to me, and made my mom lose her shit on this dude. I was around 12 years old, and we were visiting my dad who was working out of town. We were staying in his hotel room, and had ran to a local convenience store for some snacks and things for the room. As we were standing in line at the checkout, my mom was in front of the cart, at the cashier, and I was behind it. This old man, probably mid-60s or so, came up behind me and said something to the effect of "You've got nice legs." But he said it in a suggestive gross way. Thankfully, my mom heard it, and went off on the dude. You/ceaseless_duality responded. My experience is pretty tame, TBH, but I do still think about it occasionally. I was either late 12 or had just turned 13, can't remember, but my birthday is in winter, and that's when this happened, and I was walking to school. The school was about a mile from my house, so it was a decent walk. It was snowy AF outside, and suddenly a van pulled up in front of me and parked off to the side of the road. I immediately stopped walking, because I'm very suspicious of people. A woman got out of the van and asked me if I wanted a ride because it was so cold out. I immediately got suspicious because most people who ask someone if they want a ride just do it from their window as they're driving by slowly. But this woman parked and got out of her van just to ask me this. It made me feel like she wanted to snatch me and drag me to the van. Like I said, LD stopped walking and did not take another step closer to the van or her. The van had tinted windows. Another red flag for me. I told her, "No, I'm fine. Thanks for asking though." This wasn't enough though. The woman asked about 2 or 3 times. The persistence was super sus. Eventually, I was like, "Look, this walking is really important to me. I get bullied at school for being fat and I'm trying to lose weight. That's why I don't take the bus anymore. So, one walk to school. I really don't want a ride, okay?" I said it really forcefully. I didn't give a single *T about losing weight. But I was chubby and that's all I could think of to say. She finally gave up and left. I still wonder what would have happened to me if I was a dumb, trusting kid and took the ride. You/deleted responded. When I was a teen, I worked at a doctor's office. We had a patient, Charlie, come in. He was a workman's comp case, so he hadn't been a patient before. He was handsome and about 6 feet 5 inches of pure muscle, but there was something just off about him. At first I thought it was me, but when he left after his first appointment, all the office staff, all female, felt something wasn't right about Charlie. We were all so uncomfortable that we talked to the doctor, male, about it and asked if he could be the one to treat Charlie from start to finish. The doctor also got a bad vibe from him too, so he agreed and told the receptionist to schedule him only during busy times so there were a lot of people around. Charlie came in for his treatments over the course of 3 months and, other than him just being kind of a strange guy, nothing really happened. He finished his treatments, his lawyer sent some requests for paperwork for WC when he was done and we all thought that was that. About 2 years later, I was reading the paper and Charlie was arrested for violently raping a woman, and nearly killing her in the process. I know it was him because he had an extremely unusual last name and the ages matched up. He was eventually convicted and went to jail, though I don't know for how long. That was my affirmation that, as a woman, I should always trust my gut. You/Eritara7 responded. I was at a work event at a bar near the office with some colleagues. A new guy who had recently joined the company came over to stand next to me and some other people. He was with a couple of other guys from the dev team. I don't know what they had been talking about before, but he made direct eye contact with me, but speaking to another person, and said, "See man, I told you. Her eyes, it's like she's just asking for it." He made me feel sick to my stomach. I was already hating this company for a number of other reasons, and that was kind of the last straw. I got another job not long after that. You/Tenderlightning responded. When I was in college, in rural Kentucky, I ended up stranded one weekend in Lexington. My sister had dropped me off at the Greyhound station before heading to the airport. She'd been visiting me from out of state, and I was going to catch the bus back to my small college town. Only problem was that it was Sunday, and the regular bus didn't run that afternoon. This was before smartphones were ubiquitous, so I couldn't look it up in advance. I walked across the street to the Walmart with my duffel bag and sat in the entryway area calling different friends trying to find a ride home, all the while feeling near tears, stressed and tired and just wanting to get home. Then a man who was exiting the store stopped and stared at me for a few seconds. Mid-50s, grey hair, trucker cap. He said, "Do you need a ride?" I have never had this experience before or after, but I felt like I had a split-second psychic intuition and I knew that if I went with that man I would end up dead. I just instantly felt it in my bones, like I could see the future. It was terrifying. I said no, and he tried several more times, but finally left. Thankfully, a friend of a friend finally gave me a ride, still during daylight hours, and I made it home safely. U/deleted responded. I was traveling north for the first time via Greyhound bus. I was 23 and nervous as hell, and as I was walking to the bus stop with my massive backpack on, I see out of the corner of my eye a group of people leaning on the bus station's exterior walls. One woman had gotten up and started walking towards me. I ignored it because it's crowded, and I'm tunnel visioning my way to my bus stop since LV never traveled this way before. I'm almost to my stop when suddenly I feel the sharpest, most mind-numbing pain in my arm. Turns out this woman came up and with all her might elbowed me directly in the center of my arm as I walked past her. It literally knocked me 3 feet to the right. Out of reflex, I yelped and whipped my head around to her. She was dead still, stopped where she elbowed me and was looking directly at me. Holy fuck, if the gaze this woman had on me wasn't like I murdered her entire family and spit on their graves while singing God Save the Queen. She looked ready to fucking kill me, and I have never seen someone look at me that way. It made my stomach drop to my ass, and I just turned back around and walked even faster to my stop. Somehow her eyes were both lifeless and full of utter hate for me at the exact same time. I had a bruise that spanned the entirety of my upper bicep, and I couldn't use my arm for basically the entire trip. I never want to be looked at like that again. I knew if I said something, did anything, this woman would do something absolutely insane, well, more insane than knock a 23-year-old lost-looking girl to her ass for no reason. U/my white shark responded. When I was about 10, I was outside playing with 2 friends, a 9-year-old, and her little sister, who was about 7. We lived in a busy suburban area, so there were always cars around, but a man pulled up in a van and asked us for directions. Who asks a kid for directions? I told him, we don't know, go to the convenience store 5 blocks up that main road. He kept asking us to help him and kept trying to get us to come over to the driver's seat window. He was mad, and so insistent that one of us come over. My friend's little sister started walking over and I grabbed her shoulder and told him, we are kids. We don't know directions. Should I go get my parents? He sped off. It was so creepy. U/Mtriclemptiness responded. When I was about 10, I was playing on the playground alone at my school after school hours with nobody else there on a summer day. The playground was at the left side of the school, and there was a paved road all along from the front of the school to the back of the school on the right side. The back of the school is the way I would go home, through a dirt road surrounded by swamp. It was semi-secluded, but a short walk from home. I was on the playground and went around to the back right side to go my usual way home, and there was a big truck with tinted windows parked there. I tried to move around it and it moved forward to block me, so I ran to Arlen, the left side of the school, out of the truck's view to go the longer way home through the front. The truck had followed me to the front of the school. I went back around again, to leave my usual way, and the truck was once again moving around to the back. I knew something was terribly off, so I went around near the front again, but when I was behind the building where the truck couldn't see me, I went through a hole in the fence and waded through fields for about an hour before I finally got him without being kidnapped. I told my mom about this happening and she said the person in the truck probably didn't have any nefarious intentions, but I just don't believe that for a second. The very long walk home was terrifying. I kept expecting to turn back